It all started with a call that surprised everyone. Burkina Faso's captain Ibrahim Traoré, known across Africa for his quiet strength and fearless defense of his people, was invited to a major televised political round in Washington, D.C. The invite came from one of America's biggest news networks. They said it was about global leadership and African cooperation. Traoré accepted, hoping to bring real African voices into international conversations. But what he didn't know was who else had been invited. When he arrived at the studio, the atmosphere felt cold. He noticed the nervous glances from producers. Cameras buzzed. The guest list flashed on a monitor. And there it was. Donald J. Trump, former U.S. president, a man known for unpredictability and harsh words. The crew asked Traoré to stay quiet about his topics until the cameras rolled. Still, he remained calm, his military posture unshaken. As the lights came on and the host welcomed the world, Trump leaned back in his seat and smirked. "Let's begin," the host said. But what followed wasn't a conversation. It became something far deeper, far more painful, and the world was not ready for what was about to happen. 5 minutes into the broadcast, the tension became unbearable. Captain Traoré spoke with clarity about Africa's future, about dignity, unity, and sovereignty. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't boast, he just told the truth. But something about his calm power clearly bothered Trump. Trump rolled his eyes, interrupted, and then he did it. With millions watching live, Trump scoffed and leaned into the mic. "Listen," he said, waving dismissively. "You're a nobody. You don't belong here. This is for real leaders." The studio froze. A low gasp rippled through the audience. Even the host didn't know what to say. Cameras stayed locked in place, but a strange silence filled the room. Traoré didn't move. He didn't blink. He just stared at Trump. It wasn't anger in his eyes. It was something deeper, disappointment, sadness. He adjusted his posture, hands still resting on his lap. Then he smiled. Not a mocking smile, not defiant, just calm, grounded, and slowly he leaned forward to the mic. His next words would not only change the tone of the interview, they would shake the internet, cause politicians to respond, and move millions of people to tears. Traoré finally spoke. His voice was soft, but carried more weight than shouting ever could. "You speak, Mr. Trump," he said, "but you don't listen. Not to people, not to pain, not to history." The audience leaned in. "I may not be known in your country," he continued, "but where I come from, I've buried children. I've walked through villages destroyed by war. Some started with weapons made right. Here in the West," Trump stiffened, "I've stayed up with mothers whose sons disappeared in the night. I've looked into the eyes of boys holding rifles taller than themselves because no one ever gave them a book. I come from that reality." The studio was silent. "But I did not come here for your approval," he said, "and I don't need your permission to speak. I came here for something bigger than both of us." He looked straight into the camera. "For every African child who has ever been told they are nothing. I came here to say you are everything." The audience erupted. The internet exploded. But Traoré wasn't finished yet, because what he said next would bring people, especially Americans, to tears. And it was only the beginning. The moment Traoré finished speaking, there was complete stillness. Even the studio lights seemed to dim. You could hear a pin drop. For the first time in years, Donald Trump didn't respond immediately. He stared, jaw tightened, face slightly red, but said nothing. One of the panelists, a retired U.S. general, cleared his throat. "With respect, I've never heard a foreign leader speak like that. Not with anger, with truth." The audience murmured. Some nodded. Online, the clip had already gone viral. Millions were sharing the quote. "For every African child who's ever been told they are nothing, I came here to say, you are everything." In classrooms, teachers paused lessons to play it. In African households, across the world, families gathered around phones, eyes wide, hearts full. Back in the studio, the host, visibly shaken, turned to Trump and asked, "Mr. President, would you like to respond?" Trump chuckled awkwardly. "He's dramatic. Let's not pretend this guy runs a superpower." But the damage had been done. Something shifted. And Ibrahim Traoré. He simply looked back at the camera and asked one question that would change everything. Traoré turned to Trump. "No disrespect," he said, voice calm, "but would you say the same words to Abraham Lincoln?" Trump frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" Traoré continued unfazed. "Lincoln led a country during Civil War. People called him weak. Some said he didn't belong. But he stood anyway for what he believed, even when his own people laughed at him." He leaned forward. "Every true leader was once seen as a nobody until they weren't." The host blinked. The audience was hanging on to every word. Traoré's voice softened. "You mock me because I don't look like you, because I speak differently. But where I come from, we lead with our scars, not our status. We lead from the heart." In the control room, a producer whispered, "We need to extend the segment." Trump looked uncomfortable now. He shifted in his seat. "Funny thing," Traoré added. "The more you insult me, the more you remind the world why I came." The host turned to the cameras. "Stay with us," she said. "We're witnessing something historic." And across America, people didn't move. No one wanted to miss what came next. Behind the glass in the studio control room, no one was laughing. A young, black woman, part of the tech crew, wiped a tear from her cheek. "I've never seen anyone talk to him like that," she whispered. "And stay calm on screen." Trey hadn't moved. Trump tried to steer the conversation elsewhere, but no one was listening to him anymore. The host interrupted gently. "Captain Traoré, you mentioned children. Why does that matter so much to you?" Traoré inhaled slowly. "Because I was one of them," he said. "Born during unrest. My father was taken. My mother cried often. I thought it was normal. I was 8 when I first saw someone die, shot in the street." He paused. No child should carry memories like that. The audience shifted in their seats. A man in the second row covered his mouth. The air was thick. "But I rose," Traoré continued. "Not because I was special, but because someone believed in me when no one else did." He looked straight into the camera again. "If you're watching this from a shelter, a refugee camp, or a place where hope feels dead, I am you and I see you." Someone in the audience started crying, and the camera didn't cut away. The host took a long breath and leaned forward. "Captain Traoré, your words are shaking this entire building. Can we ask, where does your strength come from?" Traoré didn't hesitate. "My mother," he said, "a woman who had nothing but still gave me everything." He looked down for the first time, his voice dropped. "She used to boil water at night when there was no food, just so we could sleep thinking dinner was coming." The audience gasped. You could see tears in a woman's eyes in the front row. "She walked barefoot to the market every day to sell mangoes," he continued. "And once when I got sick and we couldn't afford medicine, she stood outside the hospital for 3 nights, begging." Trump shifted awkwardly in his chair, saying nothing. Traoré looked into the camera. "I don't speak from books. I speak from a place you don't see in Washington. A place where love is louder than bullets and mothers are stronger than soldiers." There were no words. Even in the control room, the sound engineer paused the audio feed just to wipe her face, and online the clip hit 14 million views in under 3 hours. But the next chapter would bring even more. The host leaned in again. "Captain, has it always been easy to lead with that much pain?" Traoré gave a gentle, tired smile. "Nothing about my life has been easy. And I'll tell you something I've never said on air before." He turned to the camera. "I was trained to be a soldier, taught to hide emotion, to never cry." He paused. "But the first time I saw a village wiped out, I walked alone into a forest and cried until my chest hurt." He looked up. "I cried not because I was weak, but because I was still human." The audience was dead silent. Traoré's voice trembled. "For the first time, you see, people like me were expected to be hard, to act like stones. But stones don't raise children. Stones don't protect women. Stones don't heal nations." A young girl in the audience wiped tears from her cheeks. And if I cry, he said, it's not because I'm broken, it's because I still feel. And that, Mr. Trump, is where real strength begins. Trump didn't speak. He looked like he wanted to, but couldn't, because for the first time, the crowd wasn't looking at him anymore. They were looking at a leader. By now, the broadcast had been live for over an hour, but nobody wanted it to end. At bus stops, in schools, and kitchens, Americans across the country paused everything to watch this African soldier speak. It was no longer about politics. It had become something else, something personal. Even U.S. veterans began tweeting. One post read, "I don't know who Tro is, but that man just reminded me why I ever put on a uniform." Traoré sat up straighter, now noticing the shift. "I didn't come here to fight you," he said to Trump softly. "I came here to remind the world that dignity isn't about power. It's about how we treat the powerless." He paused. "Your words were meant to erase me, but instead they've drawn a spotlight on millions who've been ignored." The host whispered, "Wow." And then the moment no one expected. An American mother from the audience stood up holding a folded paper. "My son watched your speech last year, Captain," she said, her voice shaking. "He was bullied in school for being African, but your story, it saved him." She started crying. Traoré stood up and walked to her and embraced her like family. The entire studio was crying. Even Trump looked away. The host looked into the camera. "We're getting messages flooding in. Captain Trout, would you mind hearing one?" He nodded. She opened an email on her tablet. Her voice trembled. "It's from a 19-year-old in a federal prison. He writes, 'I was arrested for a crime I didn't commit. But when I saw your last speech online, I cried for the first time in 6 years. You made me believe I'm not garbage.'" The room froze. Traoré closed. His eyes for a moment, his jaw tightened. Then he spoke softly. "Tell that young man he is not garbage, he is gold trapped in dust." The studio gasped. A woman in the back sobbed into her hands. Trump tried to speak. "This is emotional politics." He mumbled, but nobody heard him. Traoré looked at the camera again. "I don't care what side you vote for. I care who you fight for when no one's watching." Online hashtags were exploding. Traoré, truth, golden dust, strength in silence. And in that moment, millions of people across the world, especially those who had been stepped on, forgotten, or locked away, felt like someone finally saw them. As the applause slowly faded, the camera zoomed in on a small photo pinned inside Traoré's jacket. The host noticed, "Captain, may I ask, what's that on your chest?" Traoré reached in and gently pulled it out. It was a faded, wrinkled photo of a child holding a soccer ball, dirt on his knees, big eyes, no smile. "My younger brother," Traoré said, voice low. "He was shot by rebel crossfire at age 11. GPS. I was supposed to watch him that day. I begged him not to go out, but he ran off to play. I heard the shot before. I found him." He paused. "He died in my arms, and I told myself I would never let another child be forgotten like that." A single tear slid down Traoré's cheek. "I carry this photo because when I'm afraid to speak, I remember he no longer can." The entire audience was crying now. Even the cameraman's hands trembled. Trump sat stiffly, fidgeting with his tie, unsure where to look. And the world. It was listening more than ever because in that moment a leader wasn't measured by his title, but by the pain he turned into purpose. The host struggled to continue. Her voice cracked. I don't think any of us expected this today." She turned to Trump. "Mr. President, would you like to respond?" Trump chuckled nervously. "Listen, I didn't come here for a therapy session. The world runs on strength, not stories." The crowd went cold. Traoré sat up straight, calm, collected, then delivered one line that would shake the internet. "If stories don't matter, Mr. Trump, why does your name still echo in buildings yet not in hearts?" The studio erupted, not in cheers, just a heavy, stunned silence because the truth had hit like thunder. Trump opened his mouth, but no words came out. The host whispered, "Captain, would you like to close the segment?" Traoré turned toward the audience. "I didn't come here to win. I came to wake." People up. We all bleed the same. We all lose someone. And if you still have your voice, use it. He stood, placed his brother's photo back inside his jacket, and nodded once. Thank you. And may the forgotten never stay forgotten. Twitter shut down for a few minutes due to traffic. And Traoré, he walked out quietly like he hadn't just changed the world. As Traoré walked backstage after the broadcast, a producer ran up breathless. Captain, someone wants to meet you. They led him to a hallway where a young girl, maybe 8 years old, waited in a wheelchair, her mother beside her, trembling. The girl wore a small African-patterned scarf and had oxygen tubes tucked under her nose. She looked up with wide eyes. You're the man who talked about his mama and his brother? Traoré knelt slowly to her level. Yes, he said softly. I don't have a papa anymore, she whispered. But you made me feel like I'm not alone. Her mother broke down in tears. Tress's hand shook. What's your name? Imani. He took off the metal pin to his jacket, the same one he wore in battle, and gently placed it in her hand. For your strength, Imani. Stronger than any soldier I've ever known. The moment was captured on camera by someone nearby. Within an hour, it spread across TikTok and Instagram with the caption, "He gave her more than a medal. He gave her hope." And in that single moment, Traoré's image moved from a political guest to a global father figure. Later that evening, news networks scrambled to replay the interview. But it wasn't Traoré's words that shocked people the most. It was Trump's silence. Dozens of U.S. military veterans wrote open letters. One went viral. As a retired Marine, I never thought a foreign captain would remind me why I served. But Traoré just did what no president ever could. He honored the forgotten. CNN, Fox, even. Overseas stations replayed the moment where Traoré said, "If stories don't matter, why does your name echo in buildings but not in hearts?" That line hit like thunder. Trump was invited to respond again but declined. Instead, he issued a short statement that only made things worse. This guy's emotional game doesn't impress me, the public snapped. People weren't watching for politics anymore. They were watching for healing. And in every corner of the country, from refugee communities to American small towns, people began sharing their own forgotten stories online using bar seen by Traoré. The silence Trump tried to weaponize backfired because now the world didn't need more noise. It needed voices like Traoré. 2 days after the interview, in a small elementary school in Baltimore, something strange happened. A teacher wheeled in, a projector. Today we're watching someone very special, she said. 35th graders, usually rowdy and chatty, went quiet as the video began. On screen, Captain Ibrahim Traoré. They watched him tell the story of his mother, of the mangoes, of his brother. A boy in the back whispered, "That happened to him for real." The teacher nodded. By the time the segment ended, the class was completely silent. No fidgeting, no giggles, just stillness. One girl raised her hand and asked, "Can we write him letters?" That video of 30 American kids writing thank you notes to a man in Burkina Faso went viral again. But something bigger happened too. Traoré got a call from a U.S. senator. "I don't say this lightly, Captain, but you may have done more for American unity in one interview than some presidents have done in 4 years." Traoré didn't respond right away. Then he said, "I didn't come here to lead your country, but I won't stay silent if I can help your children." And that was the moment America finally understood. This man didn't need to belong here. He already did. 3 days after the broadcast, Traoré received an envelope at the Birkin Bay Embassy in Washington. No return address, just the words for the captain. Inside was a handwritten letter. The paper was smudged, tear stains. "Dear Captain Trout, I am the granddaughter of a black soldier who fought in World War II. He came home with medals but couldn't sit at a diner, couldn't vote. He died feeling like a nobody. But when I saw you look that man in the eye and speak not with anger but with grace, I felt like my granddaddy finally got the dignity he was never given. Thank you, Captain. You didn't just speak for Africa. You spoke for every invisible soul in America. Clarice R. Mississippi. Traore closed his eyes. Sometimes war teaches you that silence is survival. But that day on TV, his silence had become something more. It had become a voice for the unseen. And now those voices were writing back. Meanwhile, in Washington, the video continued to dominate news cycles. Reporters asked President Johnson for comment. Her staff initially declined, but then she stepped up to the podium herself. "I've seen the clip. I've heard the words. And I've seen the heart of Captain Ibrahim Traoré. America doesn't always get it right the first time, but we must recognize true courage when we see it, especially when it wears the uniform of another nation." She paused. He didn't ask for our approval. He reminded us who we are and who we should be. The press room erupted in quiet applause. In homes across the country, black, white, rich, poor, people rewound that moment over and over. Traoré's calm stare, the truth in his voice. This wasn't just politics. This was healing in real time. By nightfall, 12 million people had watched. By morning, the number would double. And for the first time in years, America wasn't divided over what they saw. They were united in respect. A week later, Ibrahim Traoré stood in front of Howard University's packed auditorium. He was invited not as a general, not as a politician, but as a guest of honor by students who said, "You gave us a reason to sit taller." As he approached the microphone, the room held its breath. "My brother died believing the world had no place for men like him. I once believed it too until a moment on your television reminded me that dignity is not something you wait for. It is something you bring with you." He held up Clarice's letter. "This is the America I believe in. The one that listens even when it's uncomfortable. The one that finally sees what was once invisible." He looked out over the sea of young faces. "I am not a nobody, and neither are you." The crowd stood cheering, crying, some holding hands, and as the video of that speech hit YouTube, thousands filled the comment section. I cried through the whole thing. I showed this to my mom. We hugged for the first time in years. This isn't just a video. It's a memory I'll never forget. If this story touched your heart, even just for a moment, please hit the like button. Leave a comment telling us where you watched from or who you thought about while watching. And if you believe the world needs more voices like Captain Traoré, then please subscribe. Not for me, for the stories, Tiam.